The X-Rays, also known as The X-Ray Fiend, is a British sci-fi horror comedy trick film written, directed, and edited by George Albert Smith. Released in 1897, it stars Tom Green, who was a Brighton-based comedian, and Laura Bailey, who was not only Smith's wife, but an actress and very influential early filmmaker in her own right. With a 44-second runtime, it's silent, and I would classify it as appropriate for all audiences. Little is known about the production of the X rays, though we do know its exact debut date, which is fairly unusual. This is because it was recorded in Smith's company records. Notably, it debuted in October of 1897, almost exactly 2 years after Wilhelm Röntgen's invention of the actual X ray. This trick film was born from the fact that there was a bit of X ray mania sweeping the world at the time, with people attending public exhibitions and many advertisers and artists utilizing the concept to frighten and amuse their audiences. Seriously, they started putting the word X ray on everything, even when it didn't make any sense, including headache tablets and stove polish. In addition to all of this, we know that The X rays was one of the first British films to feature the use of the jump cut, a type of editing cut that involves removing a piece of footage from a single continuous shot to create the illusion of time jumping forward or something rapidly moving through space. In the X rays, a man and woman are shown flirting when, suddenly, a scientist walks up with a device and temporarily turns them into living skeletons. After a brief moment of continued flirting, they're changed back to normal, and the woman, suddenly offended by something, storms away. Another example of a trick film that exists solely to act as a vehicle for special effects, the X rays prompt is, nevertheless, pretty fun. The ending confused me a bit though, so if anyone can explain what social faux pas was committed to drive the woman away, I'd love to know. Now, as far as performances go, Bailey and Green are pretty charming despite having almost no time to establish their characters. The actor who played the scientist, however, is just lifeless. He really just walks up and then leaves. No flair, no camp. He doesn't seem dastardly or conniving. He's just there. On a technical level, the film is a mixed bag. The jump cuts are remarkably clean for their time, assisted by the fact that the actors managed to return to their initial positions almost exactly. The costumes are adorable, even if they're not of the highest quality. I love the skeleton woman's outfit, and I love how her umbrella is reduced to just its handle and ribs. The set is kind of awful, though, consisting of just a black curtain and dirt floor. When one considers the work of Smith's contemporary, Georges Méliès, who was already paying close attention to set dressing, it looks all the worse. Overall, for a trick film that isn't even a minute long, it's worth a peek. I am going to give The X rays a 2.5 out of 5. I'd recommend it really to anyone who's curious. It won't exactly take up much of your day. The Cavalier Stream is an American surrealist horror trick film directed by Albert E. Smith and J. Stuart Blackton. Released in 1898, its stars are not credited, and with a 45-second runtime, it's silent. I would classify it as appropriate for all audiences. The making of this film is honestly more interesting than the film itself. Until recently, it was attributed to the director Edwin S. Porter, but, as I've already said, it was actually almost certainly directed by Albert E. Smith and J. Stuart Blackton, a pair of stage entertainers. Smith and Blackton had already been using a Thomas Edison motion picture projector in a stage act of theirs, but they decided, in 1897, to reverse engineer the machine into a movie camera. They founded Vitagraph Studios and began shooting things like ads and trick films within a year at their New York studio. Now, Thomas Edison, despite being a pretty famously conniving invention thief himself, had a fit over the fact that these men had done this with his invention. He tried to sue them over patent infringement, so, rather than enter into an expensive legal battle, the men opted to license their cameras and give their productions over to Edison Studios for distribution. You might be thinking that that's a lot to ask of a new production company, and you'd be right, but Thomas Edison sucked, so he didn't care. He actually worked many times over to establish a stranglehold on the newly formed film industry in America and abroad. But that is another subject for another day. In any event, the Cavalier's Dream was not particularly popular as far as we know, and it never really acquired any long lasting fame. But when the Library of Congress began to preserve some of Edison Studios' film collection, it was one of roughly 3,000 prints included in that effort, hence why we have it today. The surrealist horror film subgenre really did not exist in name yet, but this movie fits the bill pretty well with its experimental structure and obtuse narrative. I am not sure if that was intentional, or if the filmmakers just really weren't sure what they were doing. I'm also not entirely sure how to summarize this film. A man is sleeping at an empty table when a hooded figure appears and rouses him. The table is suddenly set and he sits down to eat, but then a man in a cloak, maybe the devil, appears along with a young woman who has a strange mask. More hooded figures appear, and I think the man passes out. The figures prance around the table, and he wakes up. Full disclosure, I think I hate this film. It does sort of capture the surreal and often jumbled nature of dreams, but it does it so oddly. The set is fine, the costumes are forgettable and fail to communicate much, and there's no real acting you can even see because it's all shot at such a weird distance. The only real positive is the decent substitution splicing. It's well timed, but that's kind of it. I don't know why I'm so agitated by this film. It's not even a minute long, but I just don't enjoy watching it. I find it unpleasant, but not in the way horror should be. I am going to give The Cavalier's Dream a point 0.5 out of 5. I guess I would recommend it if you're interested in really early American film history, but at this point in time, I just don't think Americans were contributing much in the realm of horror cinema. Thank you so much for watching. My next video is going to be another twofer. I'm going to be covering the French horror comedy trick film, The Devil in a Convent, and the French occult trick film, The Pillar of Fire. You can find me on Blue Sky at Under the Fleapit, and if you like what I do and want to support me, my coffee donation page is linked in the description. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want, it would be very appreciated. And until next time, this has been Under the Fleapit. Stay spooky!